Welcome to the next episode of our podcast. Indiana is Ag+Bio+Science. It's presented by AgriNovus Indiana and Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gary Dick, the host of Inside Indiana Business, also the host of this weekly podcast where we have in-depth conversations with leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs in Indiana's Ag+Bio+Science sector. That sector where food, ag, science, and technology all converge. This week, excited to sit down with Dan Dawes, Senior Director of Strategy and Innovation at AgriNovus Indiana. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Gary. Yeah. Pleasure to be here.
Always like to get some insight into the path to where people are or how they got to where they are now. So, Dan, give us your Hoosier, right?
Yes.
By birth. Give us a little background on your path.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for all that you're doing to help us at AgriNovus tell this important story about the Ag+Biosciences. I consider it a true honor and privilege to have spent my entire career essentially in helping innovators in this ag-bioscience space help to feed the world. As you know, we have a hungry planet, and there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of work to be done there. When I was growing up on a dairy farm in Wabash, I didn't imagine where this path might take me. It's been a really exciting one. And that upbringing on that farm provided some life lessons and some education that I don't know that I could have gotten anywhere else or that you can find very many places. So that propelled me then to go off to university, study agriculture at Purdue. Mm-hmm. And after that, I had an opportunity to start with a global company, a big global company that has spent many decades in production agriculture supply and has been a leader in that arena and continues this day with a great heritage on that.
Well, and that's DuPont Crop Protection, now Corteva,
right.
AgriScience. But first of all, talk about that decision you made. You grew up on a dairy farm in Wabash, go to Purdue, so the natural progression would be to come back on the farm, but you chose a different path.
Well, that's exactly what I thought I would be doing, Gary, is I went off to study animal science. I got there and my eyes were opened up to a world bigger than just Wabash, Indiana. And I had some mentors in the housing unit that I lived who suggested that I really ought to take a look at industry and the ag supply industry. So after that junior year, I took an internship and I was able to travel in a geography promoting and selling liquid plant foods for crop production. And that really opened my eyes, really gave me some confidence, gave me some great experience, started to build my network. And so then upon graduation, I was able to put that in front of the recruiters for these companies, and they could see then from my experience with 4-H and FFA, other leadership activities, as well as my coursework, and that farm experience that I had something different to offer.
Had an amazing career at DuPont. Talk about the types of changes in innovation that you saw at DuPont and in the plant science, crop protection space while you were there.
Yeah. So first of all, that was a 30-plus year experience. I don't want to say exactly how long, but it was a great experience. And I had the opportunity to work in sales and marketing, Six Sigma project management, ultimately a global assignment and some business unit leadership. But when I first started, what was happening was that the crop protection industry was really kind of taking some leaps and jumps with some technology, some formulations that were solving some really serious crop production problems across a number of different crops, grain and row crop and horticultural crops. But Mother Nature and competition changed the paradigm, changed the story at about the turn of the century. And what occurred at that time then is it wasn't good enough just to have the crop protection solutions. You needed to understand biotechnology, and you needed to understand how that was going to play a role in that crop production system. So the industry changed pretty dramatically at that point.
Yeah. You retired after a very successful career, and then you joined AgriNovus, really AgriNovus right at the beginning. Why did you do that, and what excited you about that opportunity with AgriNovus Indiana?
Yeah. Well, upon that retirement, I knew I wanted to leverage my experience, but I wanted to do something different. A good friend of mine was Ted McKinney, who was director of Indiana State Department of Agriculture at that time. And he described to me a new organization that was forming that was going to help Indiana become the unparalleled leader in innovation in the ag-biosciences. That really caught my attention, and I knew I wanted to be part of that. Yeah. And so I have been able to take advantage of some of that experience that I gained over that 30-plus years in combination with some work that I do at Purdue with a focus really on helping some of the innovators in this important space.
Yeah. What did you see when you joined in those early stages of AgriNovus? One thing as an outsider that I observed and what I felt happened when AgriNovus was launched. Unlike other initiatives, many that were successful, AgriNovus seemed to catch fire like early in terms of acceptance in the ag community, the academic communities, the business communities, all kind of came together and said, this really makes a lot of sense.
Well, I think you see this, Gary, is that there's a sense that we've been maybe underrepresented and we haven't told the story in a bold enough way. And as a result, there's certainly the opportunity that we're sub-optimized as an industry sector. And so I think there's some pent-up demand for what we've been able to do. But even more exciting, there's a pretty big runway ahead of us in terms of the kinds of things that we can do to push this sector forward.
Yeah. Your current role at AgriNovus Indiana is Senior Director of Strategy and Innovation. Talk a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. There are really 4 focus areas that we at AgriNovus put forward, and I just like in a startup where you get the opportunity to work in a lot of different ways, a lot of different types of activities. I really focus on 2 of those, and one of those is helping to be a connector. So again, being fortunate to have a decent network and build that network even stronger in the last couple of years. Sometimes people don't know that they need to be connected with somebody else. And so, maybe you can get an inkling of that and you can see where those connections might be powerful and helpful. Then the second of those 4 areas that we focus is building the entrepreneurial community. And so there's where the really strong overlap occurs with the work that is done at the Foundry, and just helping. I'm able to take that experience from my DuPont career and put it forward in some of these early stage companies and high growth firms. Well,
you mentioned the Foundry at Purdue. In addition to your work at AgriNovus, you were also an entrepreneur in residence at the Purdue Foundry. How do your work at AgriNovus and at the Purdue Foundry kind of tie together?
Yeah, there is a considerable amount of overlap. There are days or times within a day that it's not even clear which one that I'm performing that role for. But it's exciting because both firms both organizations are interested in helping this community, this ag-bioscience community, take ideas and concepts forward into more impactful ways. And really that's the definition of entrepreneurship, is taking resources, valuable resources, and moving them to a place of greater, stronger productivity. And so in what we do with AgriNovus, as well as helping startups in the Purdue Foundry community, I get the opportunity to do that.
What's your take? Because the ag-bioscience space, agriculture in general, just like most sectors of the economy, talent is such a huge commodity.
Right.
How do you keep talent, but also how do you attract talent, especially in the ag sector? Getting more young people engaged and involved in ag. Your background, what you do, what you see now gives you a unique perspective on that. How do you see the future from a talent perspective?
Yeah, it's an interesting time, but a really exciting time because of some of the challenges that we face in meeting the needs of a hungry planet. But one of those other 4 areas that AgriNovus focuses on is telling the story, so that some person who's a really bright chemist or biologist or data analyst or whatever the case might be can have a look at this space and realize that they can make a great impact on the world through applying that knowledge and skill set to helping feed the world in many interdisciplinary ways.
AgriNovus not long ago released a comprehensive assessment of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the ag-biosciences space here in Indiana. You had a big role in really overseeing that study. Were there one or two maybe big takeaways or aha moments or items from the study that you saw?
Yes. First of all, we were really exciting to see the inventory of assets that Indiana has be reported in that study. And so we should all take some encouragement from the fact that we've got those assets, and there's a lot of ways in which those can be amplified. We have a strong community. We have leaders who are interested in entrepreneurship, and our sources of innovation are also very strong. On the other hand, as you might expect, we found some things that need some attention. Mm-hmm. And by several measures, you can see that we simply are not optimized. Mm-hmm. One statistic that stands out to me, I'm sure you'd be familiar with, is the fact that 70% of job growth occurs in startups and newer, fast growth kinds of firms. And so we've got to have a strong entrepreneurial community. If we don't address that, we'll be left behind. So today we're kind of in the middle of the pack. I don't think any Hoosier wants to be in the middle of the pack. But the good news is we have an opportunity to really be stand apart.
What do you have hopes for what Indiana can accomplish with the strategies and the recommendations that came from the study? In other words, not have it be a study that just goes on the shelf, but outcomes that could impact Indiana.
There were 17 recommendations that came from that study. And so our team has focused on 5 that we want to put in place that we're referring to as really important building blocks. They're not going to be necessarily easy, but we're pretty confident that we can make a difference by focusing on those 5s. And in that process, we fully intend to find other activities, focus areas that can set our state apart in the way that we know we can do.
Dan Dawes is the Senior Director of Strategy and Innovation at AgriNovus Indiana. Dan, thanks for joining us on the podcast. Really enjoyed it, and thanks for all you do to give back to agriculture and the Ag+Biosciences in Indiana.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Well, that'll do it for another edition of this podcast, Ag+Bio+Science. It's a weekly production partnership between AgriNovus Indiana and Inside Indiana Business. And to catch up on AgriNovus's entrepreneurial activity and to read the study we just talked about in this episode of the podcast, just visit agrinovusindiana.com/activate entrepreneurs. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm Gary Dick. We'll see you next time.
This podcast is a product of Inside Indiana Business, hosted by Gary Dick, produced by Libby Fritz and Joe Ullery, and was recorded on location at Launch Fishers. More people get Indiana business news from Inside Indiana Business than any other source.